Okay, so I'd like to walk us through the general feedback document that I created. So let's take a look at this. So all of these items are things that I'm going to be paying attention to in your polished draft. So it's important that you're striving to incorporate these ideas into your draft because again, it's what I'm paying attention to, the key ideas, key things. So first, I want you guys to think consciously about how you're beginning your essay. So avoid reverting to the 5-paragraph essay style of introduction. So that's where we were encouraged to have a hook. The hook is really cheesy, so I want you guys to forget about that idea of having a hook. So avoid beginning with a question. Don't just find some random quotation you found from like Benjamin Franklin that you think will kind of lead into your topic, and don't start off with a startling statistic or fact. Those are carryovers from the 5-paragraph essay model, and they're cheesy. Okay, so another way that you could think about introducing your topic is one, just describing the scenario. So if it's some sort of controversial issue, you might begin by summarizing the different perspectives involved. Another way that you could begin is introduce a key source that maybe you rely on in your essay. So you would do it in the same way that we did with the major essay project 1, where you began with a brief but detailed summary of the text. So in that case, it was cosmic perspective, but in this case, it could be a source that you're using. So begin just by introducing that source, and then that could lead you into the topic you want to explore or bringing in your other sources. Another thing you could do is begin with a specific example. Set the scenario, set the scene of an example that could lead into the issue or topic that you're focusing on, right? So again, forget the idea of the hook, okay? It's cheesy. So um, the other thing, I want you to organize your essays around the ideas or points that you're making rather than around the sources you're using. So what I mean by that, it's say for this essay we needed to have 5 sources in total. If we're just organizing around the sources, what we would do is start off with source number 1 and talk all about source number 1, and then move on to source number 2 and then talk about that one, and then move on to source 3 and talk all about that one on down the line without showing how they're all connected. We want to avoid doing that. So to help with that, we want to look for commonalities among our sources. So the reason you found these sources is because they're all speaking to the topic in some way or other, right? So you want to look, how does source 1 connect to source 5, for example? What do they have in common? So then you can connect those ideas together, and then you can have a discussion of those two sources in the same paragraph even, so you're showing how they're all connected, right? So going on with that is we want to strive to include more than one quotation in many of our paragraphs, especially if they come from different sources. So that's a way to help organize around the ideas or points, because we're including more than one quotation in a single paragraph. So think about this. What does it mean to synthesize your sources with your ideas? So that word synthesize means to combine, right? Taking parts from different things, putting together to create something new. So we're trying to avoid what's called the listing effect. And the listing effect is when we just treat our points as disconnected items in a list without showing how they're all connected, how they're all a single progression of ideas, right? So showing how our different sources connect to common points is a way to help avoid this listing effect. Now you can take a look at Little Seagull Handbook, pages 102 through 107. The writers talk about this idea of synthesis, synthesizing sources together. So it's a good idea to check that out. And something else going along with that is to give the majority of your sources a presence throughout your whole essay. Think of your sources as characters in a movie. They should make appearances throughout the whole film. So if we think of our essay as a movie and our sources are just characters in that movie, it would be kind of a weird movie if only, the first character only shows up for the first 10 minutes of the movie, and then we never see that character again, and then the next character shows up for the following 10 minutes, and then we never see that character again, and then the third character for the next, on down the line. Movies have characters that interact with other characters and they make multiple appearances throughout the film, right? But going along with that, you could also think might have a couple sources that are your leading characters, maybe major characters, and then you have one or two sources that are minor characters. So maybe the minor characters do only make one or two appearances, but you still want to have a heavy presence throughout with your sources. So think about how your sources and points all connect to a central idea you're exploring. So this is important. Everything should be connected to that main point you're trying to get across, right? We want to make sure that we're providing context and background information for the quotations that we're including in the essay. So this includes introducing the sources to your readers. So we want to provide the authors of our sources as well as the titles of our sources in title of source, author of source argues, blah, 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 right? So we want to introduce the sources, but also for the quotations, you want to think most of your readers probably haven't read many of the sources you're using, right? So you want to make sure that you're filling them in. You're providing summaries of these sources, giving background information so that they know, oh, okay, so this is what this guy is all about. Okay, she is arguing this in her source. Okay, I got it. We want to introduce our quotations with signal phrases. So these are some examples of signal phrases here. X states according to X, as X puts it, right? We want to make sure that we're introducing the quotations so that they are seamlessly attached. They're integrated is another way to think about it. And I included some page numbers in Little Seagull Handbook that focuses on quoting and paraphrasing effectively, and they talk about this idea of using signal phrases. So think about how you're working with your source material. Are you quoting, paraphrasing, and citing correctly? So this is really important, especially paraphrasing. So what it means to paraphrase is to take the ideas or the words of somebody else and to restate them in your own words. You're still giving credit to them, but you're restating them in your own words. So this paraphrasing ineffectively is one of the key reasons why students maybe don't do so well on the final research paper, because too much of the material is basically plagiarized. It's unintentionally plagiarized, but nonetheless, it's still plagiarism. So it's important to make sure that you're giving credit to your sources and you're stating the ideas the way that you would actually state them. Don't go using your thesaurus and trying to, like, oh, what's another word I can insert here? Restate it the way you would say it, right? So to help with this, pay attention to your similarity report in Canvas. So when you submit your draft, it'll generate a similarity report. So we're using the Turnitin feature on Canvas for this. And the similarity report will tell you all the different material that's similar to other source material. And it should highlight it. You should see what it looks like, what material is coming from what sources. So we don't want our similarity reports to be any higher than 25%. So if yours is like in the 30s or 40s or worse, that could be a big deal. So pay attention to that. When we conclude our essay, we want to address that so what question. So what we mean by this is, why does this matter? What can we learn from these ideas? How will the future look if things were to stay the same or change? So this was something that we were trying to do in our first major essay project with Cosmic Perspective. So what could we learn from those ideas? We're doing the same thing with this essay, but now, of course, focusing on the topic that you're focusing on, right? So address that so what question in your conclusion. Don't just summarize what your essay is about. Hint at the main point, but really focus on that so what question. Why does this matter? Another thing that could be really effective for your conclusion is thinking about bookending your essay. So to bookend means to conclude your essay with an idea that you introduced at the start of your essay. So it kind of comes full circle. So as an example, Neil deGrasse Tyson does this in Cosmic Perspective. If you guys will recall, he introduces that James Ferguson quote at the very beginning. He used it as the epigraph, and then he kind of launched off from there and into the ideas he wanted to explore. And then he returns to that idea by quoting a little snippet from that original quote he says something about our low contracted prejudices, and that was a quote from the James Ferguson quote, right? So it kind of comes all full circle. So think about, this goes back to your introduction. If you're thinking consciously, if you decided to begin with some kind of example, you might return to that example in the end of your essay, kind of hint back at it so that your reader goes, oh, full circle. No, yeah, okay, cool. All right, yeah. So it has a bookend feel. Another thing, we want to refer to our authors by their last names only, not their first names only. So, of course, when you first introduce the author, you use both their first and last name, but every subsequent time you just want to refer to them by their last name. Don't just call them by their first names only unless you literally have their phone number programmed in your phone. If you're actual friends with them. Most cases, that's not the reality. So use their last names. We want to title our essays with this title : subtitle format, and I created a document that I'll highlight that demonstrates that. I'll start another video to show you guys. But the title is what's going to catch your reader's attention. It's something that stands out. It still is relevant to the content of your essay, but it's something that kind of grabs your reader's attention. And then the subtitle gives some kind of explanatory detail about it so that your reader has a better understanding of what the focus of your essay is. So again, I'll go ahead and highlight that document for you in another video. In my feedback, the two biggest questions I ask are how and why. Okay, so I want you guys to keep that in mind as you're composing. How and why do these things mean what you say they mean? I don't have access to your brain. I only have what's on the page, right? So I need you to explain, okay, why does this quotation mean what you say it means, right? How does this lead to that effect? Or why is this the cause of whatever the case is? So keep those questions in mind. Those are the two biggest questions I ask. So really try to address those when you're explaining your ideas. Something else to keep in mind is this should be an argument, okay? So an argument is not something that it's like a heated debate. That's not really what an argument means. An argument is just an opinion, right? Somebody else, a reasonable person, could be able to disagree with your opinion. I have the opinion that pineapple on pizza tastes delicious. Others find it disgusting. So my argument would be that pineapple on pizza is good. Others might have the argument that it is not, right? So we want to make sure that our paper is an argument. It is an opinion, a reasonable opinion, of course. It's well researched, it's well thought out, of course, but it's not just a report. A report is just simply the evidence without any way to understand it. So I guess to use that pineapple on pizza example again, a report would be some people enjoy pineapple on pizza. But that doesn't tell you one way or another how to feel about it, whereas an argument would be pineapple on pizza is delicious, or pineapple on pizza is disgusting, or pineapple on pizza is good some days and it's bad on others, right? But we want to make sure that it's not just you reporting a bunch of facts without telling us how to understand those facts. Okay, so keep that in mind. Don't try to convince or persuade your reader. So this is important for our tone. Okay, we're not trying to prove that we're right. We're not trying to prove that the other side is wrong. This usually turns your readers off if you're trying to prove that you're right about something. So instead, provide a level presentation of your interpretation. This tends to be a little bit more inviting. Remember, we want to have an invitational tone, not a confrontational tone. Essentially, we're just showing our readers how we worked our way to greater understanding on something, right? So based on all of this evidence, this is what I think and why. And then ultimately, if you presented a good argument, your reader might go along with you, right? But don't try to convince or persuade. It just gets a little too confrontational, and ultimately, in the end, you're not learning anything because you're just trying to prove what you already knew, right? And that's kind of not the purpose of this. So. And then finally, don't forget your properly formatted works cited page. This is especially important for a longer paper such as this where we're dealing with multiple sources. So use the Little Seagull Handbook to help you with this. Pay attention to what kind of sources you're using. How do you cite that source in a works cited page? So all of that stuff is included in the MLA section of the Little Seagull Handbook. So you'll recall when we were meeting face to face, I had you guys dog ear that page or the start of that section in Little Seagull Handbook, but it's all the green section. Anyway, I'm going to end this video now. 15 minutes is getting a little long, and I'll go ahead and create a shorter video with the talking about the title subtitle format. So stay tuned for that.